welcome, Miss Denasia. For those of you guys who are new, for those of you guys who have never, ever heard the Champagne Hour podcast before, Champagne Hour talk show, we are all about highlighting women in tech, women who are doing their thing online, women who are leveraging the internet to cultivate their version of success. And we have the wonderful Denasia Louise Pinkard with us today. Hello.
Oh my gosh, Sierra. Hi. I'm so excited to be here with you. And let me just say, I absolutely love what you're doing. I think it's so important, especially for Black women who, might feel like there isn't a space for them in this industry. So you're doing some really good work. I'm super excited to be here and flattered that you invited me on.
We needed to have you. It was a must-have.
They resonate. Flexible. I appreciate it.
Of course. Gotta be flexible with my guests. So, you gotta tell us about yourself. You gotta tell us about your career trajectory. Who is Miss Denasia?
Okay, well, who is Denasia? That is a loaded question, but I will say, first and foremost, I am a Black woman. I'm a very proud Black woman. I am a mom of two. I had my oldest when I was super young. I had her when I was about 19, 20 years old. So I started very, very early, and now I have a 1-year-old, and they are both my world. So that was sort of like my villain origin story, quote unquote, where I was like, all right, I gotta hustle.
Right.
I got people to feed. I could not play any games. But yeah, I think that, I attribute a lot of my ambition and grit and success to being a mom, because when you have other people looking at you and you have other little Black girls especially, it's important that they see you going out and getting what you want. In addition to that, I'm a writer. I am a lover of the finer things in life. I am a very experiential person. I love new and fun experiences. I love learning new things. I am one of those people that I think will be a forever learner. I'm always taking a course, always reading a book, always trying to figure out how I can optimize my life in one way or the other.
Yeah. I love that you're a mom.
Thank you. I love being a mom. I didn't see myself having kids, when I was young, but I think I fit into the mom genes very well. They look good on me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you were a young mom at that, so I think that's also a challenge that you kind of overcame for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And, I really had to sit down and think critically about what I wanted to do with my life and what my future was going to look like. And for me, the tech industry as a whole really stood out because, like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. And, when I was young, I used to take apart computers with my dad and we would put them back together. So I've always had this curiosity about technology and different tools and what's new and how it works and how I can use, different things to make my life easier. I think that as I've gotten older and I've worked on so many different types of projects and I've helped so many different types of companies, now I'm in a place where, what is the best way that how can we use tech for good? How can we actually use technology and all of the resources at our disposal to, live our best lives and to make life, a lot easier than it needs to be.
So what inspired you to step into tech? I know that you're a content designer, you do a ton of things. So let's talk about what led you down that path.
Yeah. So, I've been a content designer at Meta for about 3 years now. Worked on Facebook, Instagram, and I've been able to do a lot of really cool things there. But overall, I have over a decade of experience in marketing and in technology. I started out with marketing. I was like, okay, I like marketing. I'm a sucker for a good, tagline. I want to help these companies find me. The other suckers, I really want to help them influence people. And that sort of spiraled into this, me being really interested in like people behavior and how people make decisions and how technology can influence the decisions that you make and the life that you're able to live. So being in marketing and having to like scale myself into tech, I have to be very strategic about that, because a lot of times when you're a marketer, you can't just raise your hand and say, okay, I want to work at Apple now, but I want to be in product. I started by looking at my dream companies, the companies I wanted to work at. And, at the time they were called FAANG companies, FAANG. Yeah. So it's like Facebook, Apple, all of the big boys in tech. So I started looking at those companies, and I was looking at the types of roles that they were hiring for and being very intentional about highlighting, what skills are they requiring that most apply to me? Do I have any transferable skills that would apply best in this role? And as a marketer, obviously I had a ton of writing experience. I love to write. It's something that I've been doing for a really, really long time. So I had to really dig into, well, what does it look like to write in product? And I, took a lot of time to get familiar about what it means to be a content designer and to write content in products, or in an app instead of a long form blog post or, an ad that's on a billboard somewhere. So I was very intentional about that. And then once I saw, the skills that were needed, I first started mapping and saying, okay, I have this skill, this skill, this skill. I know I can confidently do these things, but I was also humble enough to know that there were gaps. And I highlighted those gaps too. They're looking for someone who has experience working with research. They're looking for someone who has experience like in product. It doesn't matter what the type of product is. So at the companies that I was already working for, sorry, I'm like stumbling over my words a bit. I sought out opportunities to scale myself, and content design and content strategy, as it was called back then, it was still very new. So it was this gap that a lot of engineers and a lot of products marketers knew that they needed, but they weren't quite sure what to call it. So, whatever company I was at, if I saw, we have a tech product, we have a software product, I would literally like find out who's in charge of it, who's the product manager, who's, leading this project. And I would say, hey, here's some things you could do better. And a lot of it centered around the UI copy and just enhancing that experience and making sure that people were able to understand how to use the product. And, it was very helpful and very beneficial to them, but also selfishly it was beneficial to me, because that was, to them, this is, Denasia's being so nice. She's being so sweet. She's contributing where she doesn't have to. Me, I was building my portfolio. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm not officially a content designer here, but if I talk to Apple, if I talk to someone at Facebook, I'm going to have to showcase like examples of when I've been in product and how I've been able to influence decisions and influence that overall experience. And yeah, that's essentially that was the beginning of my portfolio. And I think that like all it takes is working on a few websites. All it takes is like really seeking out those opportunities, even if, they're just exploratory or something that you would change on your own. Don't be shy about saying, here's the DoorDash app. Here's what I would change, and putting that in your portfolio. It's okay to be exploratory. Obviously, as long as you're being honest and saying this is an exploration, I was not commissioned to do this work, but is, my approach to content design. So I think that that's okay too, because sometimes, you can't wait for the opportunities to come to you. You have to sort of manifest them and step into them on your own.
Was there a moment where you knew like tech is for me, like this is what I was made to do?
Oh my gosh, probably, interestingly enough, I've done work for Blackboard, I've done work for NASDAQ, I did work for the Small Business Association, and it wasn't until I actually started at Meta that I was like, oh, I could do, like, this is really I could do this. And here's the thing, at that point, I had almost a decade of experience. I'd had 7 years of experience at that point. And I still had imposter syndrome. I was like, these people are really smart. they've been doing this forever. They're all gonna find me out and they're gonna know that I have no idea what I'm doing. But I will say the community there, the community of like content designers, the resources that you have, they're all there to sort of celebrate and elevate your work. And you just have to really humble yourself and be open to feedback. And once I saw like, you know, these people want to elevate my work and I'm not just boxed into doing one thing, my opinions are valued throughout the entire product development life cycle. I can raise my hand at any moment, even if it has nothing to do with a word, and say, that doesn't seem right. You know, I think we should pause. And that team will respect and value my partnership enough to actually pause and say, okay, let's step back and think about what we're doing and think about these concerns, right? So I think that, you know, at Meta, like that for me was the pinnacle of, oh, I think I'm kind of good at this. I can make a real impact in the lives of people, of the lives of, you know, the people that I'm closest to. And it doesn't hurt that, you know, it pays well, because that's important too. I'm not knocking the fact that like a good paycheck and good benefits, it's super important, especially in America.
It matters.
It definitely matters. You have to be able to like, I don't want to say enhance your lifestyle, but you know, some people are finicky about like financial stuff, but for me, I value security, and security with, you know, with where we are, it is financial. It's not just about, you know, a feeling of security. It is purely financial, especially these days, and you have to know your worth and not be afraid to ask for it.
Describe your experience in tech as a Black woman. What does that look like?
That is so interesting. So I will say, obviously, like it's way more diverse than it has been in the past. But outside of Meta, my journey has been a little bit, I'll call it insane, insightful, and, you know, painful at times. I have had clients that have made very openly, overtly racist and sexist remarks. Again, this is not Meta. These are, you know, clients before, just in my journey when I was very green and learning about the industry. And for a while, I really felt like, hey, there's nobody on my side. I'm viewed as a resource. They just want to get as much writing out of me as they can, and I'm nothing but a number to them. I have been told, you know, by a white colleague, you know, I just don't trust you, right? And I'm like, well, why? Like, you don't trust me, as opposed to, you know, the white guy sitting next to me and I'm his manager. That's weird, you know? So like that, those were the types of conversations just like leading up to, I would call like my big break, that I would consider a milestone moment, because I was doing great work. I was doing really good work, but I've noticed that I've had to realize that other people's opinions and their shortcomings and their hesitations and their biases are about them, and it's not about me. I'm actually really good at what I do. And I have to, like, you have to keep telling yourself that, because there will be people that want you to believe the opposite. They'll see your shine, they'll see, you know, that you're great at what you're doing, and they just, for whatever reason, won't like that it's you. So when you are the image of the problem, there's nothing you can do to solve it, except for continue to get better. Now, I say that to say, you know, obviously be open to feedback, but if that feedback feels like it's steeped in any sort of bias, my go-to has always been as opposed to who. So if someone says, you know, Denasia communicates well, but sometimes she can be really aggressive, as opposed to who? Like, who are you comparing me to? Like, as opposed to who are you comparing me to? Because I really want them to think about the comparisons that they're making and the conclusions that they're coming to and why they're coming to that conclusion. So it's like helping them do the work on their own a bit. But yeah, like, it wasn't easy. It was hard. I've had, you know, right before I came to Meta, I was in a role where I was told that, you know, you're young, you're Black, you're a woman, you know, let's be real, you're not going to win here. And that was after what I considered a very successful year at the company. And I was getting very good feedback, but I wasn't getting the promotions or the monetary increases that I was seeing my colleagues get. And, you know, this person, they thought that they were looking out for me by telling me that, but those are obviously 3 things about myself that I cannot change. And I had to be very intentional about whether that was where I wanted to spend, you know, potentially the next 20 years, which is like insane to think about. So yeah, from there I got very intentional. I started vetting companies, at every step of the interview process. I was like a lot less desperate. And this is where you have to be delusional and just like know that you are it.
Yes.
Because I really started interviewing companies like they were interviewing me. I wanted to know about the company culture. I wanted to know what it was like to be a Black person at that company. I was not afraid to ask the questions about diversity and how diverse the teams are and what resources are there for, people with different socioeconomic or different demographic backgrounds. And, if I felt good about it, then I would move forward. And only if I felt good about it would I move forward. And and Meta at that time and now, obviously, like they checked all the boxes for me.
Can you also touch on some of the positive, important aspects of being a woman of color in the tech space? I know that you touched on the challenges, so let's talk about the good things.
I know. I'm like, this is because I'm like, I haven't talked about it for so long, and I'm like reliving it a little bit now. But hi, Ryan. But I've always wanted to do that. I used to have like daydreams about revenge against this man.
Yes. This is the space.
Yes. But as far as like positive things, there's so many positives about being a Black woman in tech. The first thing is you're bringing perspective into a lot of rooms and into a lot of spaces that perspective typically hasn't been considered. So your perspective and your lived experience in and of itself is an asset. And don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Like I have made some of the best breakthroughs in my career by being in a room and raising my hand and saying, why aren't we considering this group of people and how they might experience the product if we use that word? Or why aren't we considering, and I obviously can't get into specifics, but I think that there is this real freedom and this real flex that comes with being a Black woman and stepping into a space and knowing that you have a perspective and a lived experience that a lot of people don't have, and it's very unique, but it adds so much value. I'll also say, it is a smaller community, so Black women in tech are so supportive of each other. So even with this podcast, you giving people this platform, like that is a pretty normal and common dynamic in tech that I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't see in other industries. I didn't see anywhere else as much as I see it in tech. And I love it so much because for the first time, I feel like a sense of community and not othered. And I feel like in other organizations where people can be pitted against each other, or it isn't the healthiest culture, it's very easy to feel like isolated and othered. But in tech, I can honestly say I don't feel that way.
And those are an amazing set of positives for women who are seeking to get into this industry. It's not just some challenging feat to where you have to fight for your life, because you will have that support in some areas.
You will have that support in some areas. So you have to seek out your community. You have to engage with your community. You have to, I think a lot of people are so obsessed with reaching up and seeing who can help them. But I really love what you're doing where it's reaching across. And I think Issa Rae talks about this, where it's I don't need to reach up. I'm going to reach across and bring all of these women together. We're not all clamoring for the attention of someone that we perceive as more successful than us, but we're coming together as a collective and we're supporting each other and we're elevating each other. And that's what I love. So of course I'm here because I want to be a part of that, not only at Meta, but outside of it too.
You mentioned women coming together, especially Black women coming together and supporting each other. I know that you have a column called The Headness, the newsletter that I subscribe to personally. Okay, yeah. I said I subscribe. Okay.
I put the first one out yesterday. I was so excited and nervous, but
it was good.
Thank you. Okay. Now I feel confident enough to do it again.
It was good. Do it again. Can you talk about some of the hurdles that Black women face though when they're attempting to access spaces of luxury?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. So let's keep in mind, and I don't mean this to be disempowering at all, but the reality of the situation is a lot of luxury experiences, higher end experiences, higher end fashion houses. A lot of these experiences and clothes and lifestyles were designed and created without Black women in mind, right? Like they were not created as spaces for Black women. So to me, it's always been interesting that like we aspire to show up in certain spaces that were not necessarily created for us. But what I've been seeing a lot of now is we're reclaiming control and we're taking up space because we've seen how often, we influence society. We influence the medium. Like we are the moment. They're looking at us to figure out what to do to sell to people that, maybe are outside of our demographic. So I really have an appreciation for this movement that I see with like us really stepping in and reclaiming that space. I'll also say another challenge is, as a Black woman, we're constantly told by various people, lots of people in our own community, that we're not worthy and deserving of nicer things. It's kind of like who do you think you are, or you're being bougie, and there can be a lot of like stigma attached to wealth and to opulence. And I really want to like deconstruct that stigma, and I want to look through the lens of like, well, if I don't get to be luxurious, then who gets to be luxurious? Why, why not me? Why is Cardi B judged for carrying a Birkin, and why are people assuming it's fake, even though she's a multi-millionaire? And you've never heard that come out of the mouth of someone seeing Kim Kardashian carrying a Birkin. Like it doesn't make sense to me, right? So I love exploring, like, obviously celebrating Black womanhood because we are deserving, we are worthy of taking up space and the luxury and, any luxury experience, but also really looking through the lens of, how does our experience as Black woman and the experience of Black womanhood relate or influence the world of luxury and how we experience luxury. So it's like this like weird dance that I feel like we're doing with, with the industry, but it's very interesting and I see it going in a positive direction, especially because like this whole like I am worthy, like I'm a Black woman, I am worthy as I am. I get to define what luxury is to me. I'm seeing that a lot and I'm loving it. And I want to see more of it because for a long time, I've always loved nice things. I've always liked to have money. I've always liked, fine leather goods, right? Treat yourself. So, but, I didn't feel deserving or I felt judged or, even now today when I buy things, I don't post it on social media or flex, even if I want to, because I'm bound to get like hateful comments or commentary from people in my community and it doesn't feel great.
Been there. That's a story of a lot of Black women who choose to want more, pursue more, be more. We always have to justify why we want more.
And I was going to say, and that's why I named the newsletter The Hedonist, because hedonism is an unapologetic pursuit of pleasure. And like, that is the vibe that I'm living in now, moving forward. And I want to invite other women, Black women, to come and experience that vibe as well. I want you to unapologetically seek out experiences, things, moments that bring you pleasure, and don't feel bad about it. Like, embrace it and know that, that's what life is about, enjoying yourself, whatever that looks like.
Talking about inspiration right now as well, and you being inspired by Black women, is there an ultimate inspiration in your career trajectory that has brought you to this point, if anyone at all?
Oh my gosh, I will say Shonda Rhimes, just because I'm a writer. I love her. I feel like she's shattered so many glass ceilings. She's also about her money and she knows her worth. And yeah, I love that, we're seeing more of it now, especially with the release of Megan, that booklet that was written by Black women. I think we're seeing more Black women getting their work greenlit. And that to me signals that there is less of a need to oppress certain voices and there's more of a desire for those voices and perspectives to be seen and absorbed by our community, which is like lovely to me. So I see Shonda Rhimes as like kind of the beginning of that, at least for me, where I was kind of started taking notes like, okay, she's doing this, she's still doing this, reviews are great, like, you know. And that was very inspiring to me too, like, oh no, I can do this. And I don't, you know, I think Shonda Rhimes is beautiful, but I do think that there is this like very like cookie cutter way as a Black woman that, you know, people expect you to look if you are to be successful or if you are to live a certain type of lifestyle. And I personally don't subscribe to that.
For those of you guys who don't know, I am officially obsessed with Denasia, officially obsessed with this conversation, because everybody who knows me well knows that I have the biggest crush on Shonda Rhimes. I love Shonda Rhimes. Biggest fan of Shonda Land. Like, she is, when I say she is the biggest beast, not even in television, but just as a writer, as someone who produces, she does everything. Yes. She is just across the board a powerhouse for Black women. I love Shonda Rhimes. So it's insane to know that other women are looking at her in the same way, because I am like her biggest fan. I love Shonda.
Shonda's on next. Shonda's up next. I'm manifesting it for you. I'm gonna see her on here and I'm gonna be like, you know, this is what it's about. But make sure, you know, you bring up this podcast too when she's on, when it's her turn.
No, seriously. We've got to all touch base at once and be in the same Zoom. So,
oh my gosh, I would love that. I'm going to hold you to it.
I'm going to hold you to it. Shonda, she's got to come on. I'm when I say biggest inspiration, when I saw that one actually dominating media the way she's been dominating for the last 10 years. I mean, Grey's Anatomy in itself is a masterpiece. Let's be honest.
So oddly, I've never seen Grey's Anatomy.
That's okay. It's okay.
I've never seen Grey's Anatomy, and it is like no shade to Shonda, you know, no at all, but like top of mind, oh my gosh, this is gonna like, it's gonna drive me crazy. I'm gonna have to list out all her shows, and I don't want to get anything wrong, so bear with me 1 second. So we know she had Grey's. Okay, Scandal was obviously like the biggest one. Yes. So the Scandal was when I was like in my Olivia Pope vibe, but I will say that like what drew me to Shonda Rhimes, so she's very talented, she's a great writer, but her book Year of Yes, that is what initially, like, that's what, you know, obviously that came on and after her career, but Year of Yes was the thing that converted me to a Shonda Rhimes stan. I literally did a Year of Yes and it completely changed my entire life. My Year of Yes, I literally ended that year accepting the offer from Meta. Like, I believed in that Year of Yes, so I have it tattooed.
Wow.
It says yes. Oh, it's backwards, but it says yes.
Wow.
I'm so, you know, I've never seen Grey's Anatomy, but, you know, I have Yes tatted on me. I'm obviously a huge Shonda fan. But yes, I mean, I think Scandal is the best one, but I think that like beyond that, the way that she talked about her life and the way that she had been living it and how self-aware that she was about like her pursuit of success and how ambitious she was, but just being very real about that. She was real about the fact that she wasn't taking time to step back and be present and embrace and enjoy life. And at that point, I'd been in such like a hustle mode that I had the same sentiment and it resonated completely with me. So yeah, ever since then, she hasn't been able to get rid of me, I guess.
You've worked with huge names like NASDAQ, Blackboard. Please highlight for the people how these experiences came about. Let's really get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty gritty. I'll put y'all on. So if you're very early in your career, I'm not going to say if you have zero experience, I feel like all experience is valuable. If you're very early in your career and you have a sense of the direction that you want to go, 9 times out of 10, and this is just my personal experience with the resume I had at the time, which like lacked significant impact, like digital impact, you know, it was more like operational and all that kind of stuff. I can't just go to NASDAQ and say, hey, hire me, I want a job, and like expect to get a call back. So I had to be very strategic. So the approach that I took is I applied to work with agencies and consulting firms. And, you know, some people have their feelings about consulting firms, they have their feelings about agencies, but I will say that a consulting firm or an agency, that I would prefer a consulting firm, because I think that like they're a bit more flexible if you lack a ton of experience. But working at a consulting firm is a great way to get experience on the job while working for like these huge names, and these like they're way more forgiving, way more flexible, and you still get that name attached to your portfolio and to your resume. So if I gone to NASDAQ myself, I probably would not have been hired, but I was hired through the consulting firm that they worked with to launch a specific initiative. And, you know, when you step in and you are able to scope out and see opportunities for you to scale yourself, that's how you can step into like more of that leadership role for whatever function you're in, whether you're a writer, whether you're a designer, whether you're a project manager, and build trust and rapport with your contacts at that brand and like, or at that company. And me personally, like relationships are super important. Don't be afraid to network. Don't be afraid to like connect with someone when you don't need anything, just to check in on them and see how they're doing, to give them ideas of how they can elevate the work that they're doing, you know, obviously within reason. And people tend to value that. And that's how I got tapped for, okay, we're doing this thing on NASDAQ, but we're also going to tap you to do this similar thing on Blackboard because these clients really trust you. And we're going to tap you to work with this agency because the person who worked with you at NASDAQ is now at this, you know, agency, and they're asking about you again. So that's really, in my mind, a strategic way if you don't have like the means to just walk into a NASDAQ or walk into like a huge company with earlier in your career and say, hire me, right? Because you're competing with the best of the best. You could be competing with someone who has 10 years of experience and really just wants a paycheck. So they don't care if they're overqualified. But with consulting firms, I think it's a bit different. I think that they're way more flexible, and it also leaves you a lot of room to scope out, you know, if you don't want to be in content design and you'd rather be a project manager, there's opportunity to like step up and do that too, because a lot of these teams are way under, you know, staffed. If you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you know, you might be having to do all the things. But I think that, you know, that's one approach. The other approach is startups. So I worked with a ton of startups, and the reason I worked with these startups is because I was very interested in working in product, right? So while the startups were like, oh, she's a great marketer, like let's bring her in for this marketing, I was also just selfishly, like I told you earlier, I'm interested in the product. So I'm going to be a sneaky little marketer, and I'm going to say, can you give me a demo of the product? And then I'll start pointing things out and seeing where there's room to optimize. And just being very strategic about how I have those conversations, and you'd be surprised at where that can take you.
So you're currently working on equity within the Meta space.
Yes. So I'm a content design lead on the equity team at Meta currently. And I've been at Meta for 3 years now. And like, this is probably the 3rd or 4th team that I've been on. But at Meta, that's like a good thing. It's not a bad thing. You get tapped to take on more complicated projects as you progress in your career and as you're able to scale yourself and as you grow. And I'm all for a stretch opportunity. So if I get tapped for something, even if it seems a little bit overwhelming, I try to scope it out a bit and just see if it's a fit. And even if I don't think it's a fit and I'm a little scared, I've just been like, I got to do it anyway. So yeah, I mean, I love my team. I work with a really solid group of people who are all super passionate about the space.
I'm obsessed with Meta right now. Obsessed.
They got a lot of stuff going on. We have a lot of really cool stuff going on. Obviously, you know, you and I talked about it. I can't get into
right.
Hey. But I will say that like, I'm very proud to be, you know, I'm very proud to be at a company that cares about the type of impacts that they're making in the lives of people, like in the real world. And I can say that like my team, the people that I work with currently in leadership, like they all like have this sentiment of, we want to do the right thing, and we're trying to figure out what that is and what tools we have at our disposal in order to like make that happen. So, you know, I love it. I think it's a great company. Obviously, they treat their employees really well, and the culture is just fantastic. As far as, you know, building the relationships to get there, I will say it's a lot of like what I told you about before. So I was very intentional. So probably a year before I got an offer from Meta, it's probably a year or two before I got the offer from Meta. That's when I really sat down, and this is where I'm about to give you the nitty gritty. Yeah. I sat down, I told you I looked at all the job descriptions, I highlighted like what I was able to do, where the gaps were. I spent that year filling those gaps. So again, I was very intentional about the opportunities that I pursued. Even if it wasn't like exactly related, I would figure out a way to make that skill transferable to like whatever it was that I wanted to do. And I made sure I filled those gaps. Now, you filling those gaps, it's fine, but if you're not in product, if you're not at a tech company, it can be very hard to make those skills applicable to tech, just like on your own, or it can just like take a lot of time and a lot of work. So I actually use in like an algorithm thing, not an algorithm thing, it's like an app. I have to find the name of it. I'll send you the name of it. I don't know the name of it, but basically what this website did is they would scan a job description and they would scan your resume, and they would let you know what the likelihood of you getting a call back based on your resume against this job description, if there's a machine just picking out, you know, who gets hired and who doesn't. And let's be real, that's usually the case. There are machines that are saying these are the top people, and like, you know, these, you know, are not a fit. But basically I use that website to define, like, am I talking about my skills in the way that will resonate with the people at this organization who have been doing this for quite some time? So you can have all the right skills, but if you are not able to articulate it in a way that they'll be able to take it in and say, okay, this girl knows what she's talking about, this guy knows what he's talking about, you know, they know what they're doing, then it's for nothing, right? Like, you're doing all that extra work for nothing. You have to be able to articulate that you have the skills that they're deeming necessary in order to do this job. So I'm gonna have to find the name of the app for you before
we need it.
And it's not an app, it's a website, but basically that's like what I use. And it highlighted all of the keyword, like any keywords that I was missing, any turns of phrase that I was missing that, you know, they saw consistently pop up. So they would say things like, you know, you talk a lot about content, you say content marketing in your resume 15 times. This job description says content strategy and content design 30 times. They're not going to give you a call back, and it's something as simple as that. You know what I mean? And once I started taking sort of the recommendations from the app and like using the correct terminology and making sure I was articulating my skill set in a way that would resonate, not with the consulting firms, not with these startups, and not with any like sort of marketing or ad agency, but that would resonate with tech, that's when I started getting the calls, and they were coming in like hot and heavy. And I felt pretty confident about, like, you know, the fact that I had like options to choose from. I didn't just get a call from Meta. I got calls from Uber. I got calls from Airbnb. I got calls from like all of these huge companies that were willing to talk to me just because I figured out how to articulate my skill set in a way that resonated with them and their machines. But let me see if I can find the name of that app.
Those of you guys who don't know, I run a group, a Facebook group that is primarily built on helping women find great positions in tech and resources to assimilate into tech. Yeah. So that's a huge tool for
you're doing some great work. Yes. So it's called JobScan. It's called JobScan. So JobScan, JobScan.co. They got me where I'm going. I think that, you know, obviously there are more tools now. So I don't know if, you know, you or, you know, your girls are familiar with ChatGPT.
Yep. Love me some Chat GPT.
Oh my gosh, I think it's great. I think it's amazing. I think that like if you know how to structure your prompts in the right way, it can be very useful for helping you to like develop a portfolio or articulate your skill sets, to help you put your little pitch together, which is something I tend to need help with because I can ramble. So I think it's like such a useful tool, and like you can literally upload your resume, like, you know, paste your resume, and you can say rewrite it so that it matches to this job description, and it will do it for you. And yeah, you got to work smart, not hard. That's just like my philosophy.
Chat GPT, for those of you guys who are not familiar, get familiar. It will make your life 10 times easier. That's what AI is here for. It's not here to replace you.
It's exactly, and that's what I am talking, like, you know, I'm such a nerd about this stuff too, but I do it all the time, where it's like so many people are afraid, like, you know, this is going to replace what I do. And I'm like, if Chat GPT can replace you as an employee, then you are not a valuable employee and you don't know how to scale yourself. And that might sound kind of harsh, but like for me, I know tomorrow Mark could say Chat GPT, like, you know, and then what would I do, right? So I have put myself in positions where this is where you sort of have to think big and open your mind about what it looks like to scale yourself. I don't see myself as just like a content designer. I see myself as a creative director. So like if Chat GPT came along, I feel confident enough that I know how to structure prompts. I understand keywords. I know how to get the best output. I know, you know, the best ways to like help mitigate bias in the responses that I'm getting. So that puts me in a position where I'm still valuable and I'm able to show that value. But I also think it's important to like know how to showcase that and to be proactively putting yourself out there and learning new things. So for example, ChatGPT was released. The first thing I did was I started an ebook on like structuring your prompts for ChatGPT. I haven't like released it yet, but I started, like, I was like, I'm going to write this ebook. I'm going to document everything I'm learning. And then I'll just make it available for other people to use. And not only are other people going to find it valuable, but that also positions me as the expert. And to be the expert in the space, you don't necessarily have to know all the things. You just have to know more than most people, if that makes sense. So don't pressure yourself to know all the things, but you have to be willing to learn and just like, you know more than the average person. And that means just like spending time in different tools and having a strong perspective on how you can best leverage that tool. And that right there is like your calling card.
You have to not be afraid to nerd out, you guys. That's really just the bottom line.
Don't be, and like, don't, you know, I don't know. It's like, no, you don't know yet, right? Like you just don't know yet. You don't know how to do it yet. But once you get into it, and this goes for anything that you're passionate about, like, don't be afraid to nerd out. Don't be afraid to like learn about the intricacies of it. Like I have the hedonist. I love like fashion and luxurious experiences, but I'm also a nerd, and I'm like, I've been studying like the economics of like price increases for luxury designers, and like, why do certain brands have price increases? How often do they have price increases? What warrants a price increase? And basically the intersection of like how the price increase weirdly shows value to their customers, who, you know, and sort of like is a key element in people feeling that rush to make a purchase because they know that they're going to get a return on their investment, especially if there's a price increase. They can expect a price increase. It's basically like saying, I know I can buy this stock right now for $50, and on Tuesday it will be worth $150. So it's kind of like the same mindset. And yeah, I love all like the little nerdy stuff. No matter what it is I'm doing, I have to know how it works and why it works that way.
Marketer, do you see how niched that is? I think my agency has been very much focused, and we see the future of what we call signature content, right? So when people come out with these things that they know, and it's very niched, people actually want that. There's a demand for that at this point in time.
Yes, you want to find your tribe, and it's so important that you find your tribe. That's why you have the group that you have. You have a group created for Black women who want to navigate their way into tech, right? Or if they're in tech, continue to navigate what a career in tech looks like and learning how to scale themselves. That's not a resource that is abundantly available for Black women, yet we're constantly trying to like figure out how to do the thing you know, and it can be really hard on your own to figure out how to do the thing. Let's be honest, while a lot of these companies are way more diverse now than they've been in the past, you know, historically, you know, these companies have been made up by people who have gone to Ivy League schools, they have large networks, and all of these systemic sort of like requirements that exclude Black women, or that are more likely to exclude Black women. So I think that the platform that you're creating is, you know, equivalent to the resources that, you know, the white men that are already in these positions have.
Thank you. Wow. That means a lot coming from you. My
No.
heart, my soul. Wow.
I mean it. I mean it. It's so important. No, I mean, it's so important, and, you know, no pressure, but like, that's why you definitely have to keep going, because it's not an immediate ripple effect, but you'll definitely start to see those ripple effects. You know what I mean? Sort of come back and come back and come back. And it's, yeah, I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I grew up on tech, and it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. I think my education very early afforded me the tools. Like I said, you know, robotics and engineering, STEM, that, right? Like, those are things that I'm extremely passionate about, and being exposed to even like computer science early, like that was a requirement for me. So those are tools that really afforded me economic mobility very early in life.
Yes. And I think that, you know, those programs, or those types of programs, can seem very intimidating to some people, but I think that that's why like your personal lived experience is so important, because you can go through those programs and you can put your own spice on it. You can, you know, I've been in tech forever and I'm launching a newsletter. That's something I didn't have to work in tech for 10 years to do. It's not something I need a master's degree to do, but it's something that, like, you know, I've done the hustle and grind and I've done all this stuff, but now I'm in a place where I want a soft place to land. And I'm seeing that thematically with a lot of women who like work really hard. So it's about, you know, not just like having the technical skills, but I think like the interpersonal skill as well, to sort of like identify, hey, there's a need, how can I fill that need? And the more, like, I think that tech is such a unique industry where you see a problem, you're able to go solve it and see like real tangible results, like you get to see right away how you did, right? And I think that that does something to like this like confidence muscle, where if you see a gap, you're like, let me just go fill that gap real quick, like, you know. Like it doesn't have to be
marketing brain.
Yes, it is. It's a marketing brain. It's like, you know, it's a lot of confidence too, because it took me a long time to get to a point where I could say, that's a problem. Let me, you know, I don't need permission to like fix it. For a long time, I do it on permission, but like now I flex that muscle enough to say, like, I don't need permission. I'm going to fix it. And, you know, permission to fail. If it doesn't work, all I'm getting is like data about what I need to do differently. You know, that doesn't mean stop. So.
Right. Do not feel failure. For those of you guys who are listening, you're looking at two women. I guess I can speak for myself in this aspect. You are looking at people who have failed many, many, many times. And we did not allow that to defeat us. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of shitty comments. You're going to get a lot of people coming to you and telling you that you can't. And the solution is remembering and always keeping in mind that, yes, you can.
Yes, you absolutely can. Like, and that's like where the don't wait for permission, and, you know, also give yourself permission to fail. Like, it's so important. I think that there are so many like toxic organizations that punish failure, and they're not interested in understanding what you've learned from it, that it can instill this fear of like doing the wrong thing or taking a misstep. But I think that, you know, even if your company is toxic and doesn't reward failure necessarily, you personally have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, you have to be. You have to get past, what if I do it wrong? What if they say this about me, that about me? None of those people matter. You will not remember their names unless they apply for a job to work with you. And, you know, I always say something's gonna shake. You know, so if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work, and you keep going and you know what I mean? If you want to try things, like, something is gonna shake, something is gonna like, is gonna stick to you, and you're not gonna be able to get rid of it. for, and it's going to be abundant, and it's going to open all of those doors that you've been seeking, but you have to put yourself out there and see what's going to shake for you.
You pride yourself on crafting experiences that help people come together. So can you speak more to the key elements that make up a meaningful digital experience? Because that's where the world is going.
Yes. Number one, ease. Has to be easy. Like if it's difficult, no one is trying to figure out our attention span, our tolerance for I don't know if I can curse, but my tolerance for bullshit is like is at a zero. I have zero tolerance. Like I have zero tolerance for bullshit. So like if I feel that way, I know that there are so many other people that like they want it to be easy. So it has to be easy. It has to be inclusive and representative. So you have to feel like no matter who you are, this experience is talking to me. This experience is for me. And I think that that's where a lot of companies get it wrong. They spend a lot of time focusing on individual people or groups of people that they want to target. And the way that I look at it is I think about outcomes and like, what is the outcome that I want to create? So while I can say like, I am targeting women, like for the hedonist, right? Like I'm going to target women in their late 20s, early 30s that make at least 6 figures and live in this region. And that's where, I'm going to focus on. And I could do that. And like it, for, what we talked about before, it might not shake, right? Like they may have felt like, okay, I've been there, done that. This isn't necessarily information that I need, but it's cute. If I focus on an outcome, which is, I want Black women to feel celebrated. I want them to be able to come and reclaim their right and their worth as far as it relates to luxury and having these different amazing experiences come into their lives. That's the outcome I want to focus on. I don't care where you are as a Black woman in your life, but that's the outcome that I want for you. And that's the intention that I'm setting. So now that I'm setting that intention that focuses on the outcome, it's very rare that someone will come against a piece of content that I've written and say, this doesn't relate to me. This isn't what I want. And I think that more companies could learn from that to just like focus on the outcomes instead of like targeting specific groups of people. Another example is, if I don't want to talk about the hedonist and I want to talk about a more practical example, accessibility ramps, right? They may, initially say, I'm going to build an accessibility ramp and it's going to be for people that use wheelchairs. If you put that in a sign and you say that this is only for people who use wheelchairs, what about the mom with the stroller? Yeah. She have to take the stairs now. What about the person on crutches? What about anyone for any reason that needs to use that accessibility ramp? You're excluding all of these groups of people. So if you just focus on the outcome, which is an alternative to stairs, there has to be an alternative to stairs, then, you open up your product, your experience to so many different types of people that can get value from it. And those will be your biggest advocates, because even if you aren't targeting them specifically, you're meeting an outcome, you're meeting a need that they have, and they're gonna ride for you. And then I would say, like, lastly is don't be too proud to optimize and have to make changes. Whatever you put out there, it doesn't have to stay the same. You can always change. I'm always looking for feedback. That's one thing I learned very early on at Meta. They have a culture of feedback. And at first I was like, oh, that's, a nice way of like us being really mean to each other, because that had been my experience at other places. But now we are literally a culture of feedback, and I have to get so comfortable with people a lot of times not telling me exactly what I wanted to hear, but now I can get told a thing and it has nothing to do with my worth. It has nothing to do with how good at my job I am. I'm good at my job because I'm able to take that information and make different decisions to get a better result.
What a revolutionary perspective to have.
Thank you. But I'm sure you work in tech, so I'm sure like these are all like very like basic.
Yes, but I love the fact that you're speaking to outcomes, because we're numbers people by nature. I know me as a marketer, like I love the numbers. I love to see what makes those things move. But the fact that you're bringing forth this perspective about focusing on outcome, I think that is something that businesses all over the globe can benefit from. Yeah. Especially as they move forward trying to expand their appeal, because we do have a very niched communal feel that we're seeing coming into the climate, right? The digital climate.
Oh,
Huge.
for sure. And then like having strong perspectives and focusing on outcomes, right? That's also a key way to differentiate yourself.
Yes.
Instead of like sounding like everyone else who's trying to talk to that one particular group of people. I just think, I know you said it's revolutionary. I appreciate that. I'm feeling myself. I'm have to.
Yes, as you should. Okay.
Revolutionary. But yeah, I think it's just like definitely a great like perspective to have. And to your point, like we are numbers people, right? Like you have to have impact. But if you're gauging impact on how many people that use wheelchairs use the accessibility ramp, and you're not looking at all of the people that were able to use the ramp, then you're doing yourself a service too, right? So your number's at a 10 when it literally should be at a 10,000 because of focusing on the outcome and not just one group of people.
There you go. So
give me 1 second. Let me make sure my computer is not charging and I don't want it to die.
No,
okay, we're good. We're good now. We're good.
Great. What do you have to say to women who may look up to you, who may want to find themselves breaking barriers in tech spaces as you are, because that's exactly what you're doing. So what advice do you have for the trailblazers that are coming after you who maybe want to work at Meta or somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like be intentional. Oh, hold on. I got a little prompt. It said it's going to kick us off in 10 minutes. Girl, your Zoom links don't play. But I'm feeling it. I appreciate it though. But I will say, as far as like words of encouragement, the first thing is like, don't stop. Like you have to believe in yourself. You have to be delusional. You have to know that like you are great at what you do. And I know that can sound like a little woo-woo, but like, I promise you, if you come in with that energy, other people they'll see it and they'll respect you for it. The second thing is like, give yourself permission to fail. I think that if you give yourself permission to fail, that's sort of like as Black women who like, we're not supposed to be able to do anything wrong. We have to save everyone. We got to get it right all the time. I think that like, that allows you to go into your work a lot more lighter. And when you're lighter, you can be more creative, right? You're coming from like an abundant mindset instead of like this restrictive, I just don't want to get in trouble mindset. And I'll also say you have I heard it not good, but I'll also say you have to be very intentional. And that's what I talked about earlier. Like early in my career, I was very intentional. I said, these are the names of the companies that I want to work for. Like if I have to work for anybody, it's going to be at one of these. And then I did a lot of research into like where I might be able to best fit in. I highly suggest people do that. The more intentional you are, the more I promise you the opportunities, the specific opportunities that you're seeking will come your way and they'll knock on your door. Lastly, and this is just like a little like, tidbit. I know like everyone wants a mentor, everyone wants a sponsor. I think that that's great, but I will also say continue to reach across and scale yourself. You'd be surprised at the people that want to help you. So if there's someone at a company that's doing the work that you want to do, like don't be afraid to reach out to them on LinkedIn and ask for an informational interview. I will also say that like don't also only ask for things or ask to receive, but like if you are reaching out to these people, try to think of a way that you can be a value add to their lives or to their career or to whatever initiative that they have going on. So it's a win for both parties. And there are so many ways that could look like, obviously, but yeah, just like be intentional, give yourself permission to fail. It's going to be all right. Something's going to shake. And don't stop. Like, do not stop. Don't feel like, I'm not getting the offer that I want or whatever. Like if you have to take a lower offer or a pay cut, whatever you feel like you need to do because it's going to work out or the return on that investment is going to be greater, then do it. Before I started at Meta, I was at a crisis comms firm and I literally took a pay cut to come to Meta. And a lot of people don't know that, but I took that pay cut because I was very intentional and knowing that if I'm at Meta for a year, I can literally go wherever I want to go and do whatever I want to do. I can go and work at Meta for a year and then double my salary somewhere else, at a smaller company, at a startup or wherever else. So I think like you have to like, just look at your situation holistically and don't be so bought in to like, unless it just, logistically looks like it's going in a certain direction. That's the only way for you. There's so many ways to get to the place that you want to be financially and, otherwise.
Miss Denasia,
That
thank
was a
you.
lot. Thank you. I know I'm like, I feel like I said a lot, but I hope it was helpful.
We need it all. We need it all. Me and my girls need it all. So for you to come on and share as much information as you did, I don't think you know the footprint that you're making online right now and the impact that you're making on other Black women who want to excel in this area. So thank you for also joining me in my mission.
Of course, I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you're doing. I loved the last episode. So like keep doing what you're doing. You are doing like such great work. I love like learning about like different types of roles in tech and the different types of ways people are like using tech to sort of excel in their careers and in their lives, especially Black women. Like I'm loving that for us. So I want to see more of it. So that's just my way of telling you, like, you know, even if you want to stop, you're not allowed to.
I'm stuck with it. So
Stop with it. No pressure. Some gonna shake.
this is my mission. Some gonna shake. So I appreciate you guys so much for listening in. If you guys want to connect with Miss Denasia, you guys can find her social medias in the description box below. If you guys want to reach out to her or see what she's got going on, all of her links are going to be available for you guys to find. And we out. That's it.
Bye.